It's Sunday, May 16th, 2021. Here's today's balcony garden update. It's actually nice. It's a Sunday. It's very nice out, and it's unseasonably warm. So the first thing we're going to look at is the tomato plants. They're planted in the ground. So here's what they look like on Friday. Well, it's early Friday afternoon, and you could see that the tomato plants were struggling on the balcony. The ones that were grown from one cherry tomato last summer. So I'm over in my sister's house and I'm transplanting these into the backyard. I think they have a better chance in the ground than they do on the balcony. So here I've planted 1, 2, 3. So I gave it a support stick, and that should help it, as long as the animals don't eat these before they get to strengthen. And the first one I put a cage around, and that way if it grows out wild, at least that'll help support it. So here on the other side of the backyard, you can see that the leaves, some of them are dying along the top, but the plant has good roots and they still seem pretty healthy. So hopefully they'll adapt in the ground, and like I said, as long as an animal doesn't eat them, they should grow up and be healthy tomato plants. So here's one over here, a bit of a smaller one. And then that big cherry tomato plant that I had, the one that grew like crazy, all the leaves started blowing off in the wind at home. Still got some leaves on it. So I've transplanted this into the ground as well. I put a support stick to hold it up and a cage, so hopefully it grows out. There's the tomatoes that you saw last week in my video. Okay, and the top part unfortunately blew off it, but well, it should grow back. You can see how tall this thing is. We're still going up, and I've supported it as high as I can. And now here's an update just 48 hours since they've been planted in the ground. Okay, so this was the tomato plant that I put out on the balcony, and the leaves all blew off it in the wind. Still has a couple tomatoes on it. Giving it a good support. Giving it some plant food. It is in the ground. I just have to wait and see if it's able to survive here or not. This one here seems to be supporting on its own. Again, they don't look overly healthy. Just got to give it time and see if they're able to strengthen enough and revive themselves. I'm gonna take the dead leaves off this. Now this one as well is able to stand on its own. Unfortunately, it also needs the dead leaves removed from it. Don't know if it's going to be able to survive, but again, we give it plant food and water. I just have to give it time and see if it can adapt to the ground. Now this one is extremely skinny and it needs support, but it does have green leaves on it. Because without leaves it won't do anything. These leaves actually look quite healthy. So hopefully this one will make it. And this one here doesn't look too healthy either. But it does have a healthy stem, so we just have to give it time and see. Now remember, you can't get a good indication in just 48 hours after planting. Plants take time. If you remember in last year's series, the first tomato plant that I had, which started to grow like crazy, so I put the biggest cage around it. That ended up being the biggest disappointment. And the smallest plant that didn't look like it was going to make it at all ended up being the most productive. Now I did bring back 2 of the tomato plants here, and I'll show you that progress. Now if you remember, we had what looked like about 6 or 7 plants, and they were all intertwined, so I separated them. It looked like they were fighting for water, and I want to show you. You can see that this one has leaves on it, and this one also has some shriveled leaves. And that's probably because it wasn't getting enough water. I need to remove these dead leaves from the plant. Because if you have water just going to dead leaves, then that water is wasted, which could be the water that's needed for another part of the plant to survive. Now for anybody who looks at this plant and prejudges it and thinks, oh no, that has dead leaves on it, it's not going to survive, why are you wasting your time? Well, you see the budding here? Can you see it? I'll zoom in as close as I can. Looks like it started budding, which means that this plant is probably going to produce tomatoes. That's why. Now out of all those tomato plants you saw, I ended up with this little tiny one. This was the smallest of them all. It does have leaves on it, you can see. It's very, very small. And I figured it was too small to plant in the ground because an animal would probably just chew it up. So what I've done is I brought it back home and I put it in this planter, and again added some eggshells, a few little potato skin scraps, and a nice healthy layer of organic topsoil and some water. And we're going to keep an eye on that one and see what happens with it. Now here's the jalapeno plant. Now this one absolutely blows my mind, because this started off indoors in the winter, and it has actually produced, so far, we have 4 peppers on it. And they look extremely healthy. And I'm looking forward to see what this plant can do as the summer progresses. I also took another planter and I went and purchased some spring onions and put them in this planter, because I like onions. Onions are easy, they'll grow in almost any condition. Now over here, these are the red peppers from the pepper seeds that were planted, and they turned into these little plants here. So I have a bunch of these little things. I spread them all out nicely. Now this was last year's strawberry plant. Normally I would have pulled all this out and just left it over the winter. The winter came a little fast this year, and so some of the plant's roots, I guess, were still in the planter. These survived the winter, and look, they are growing again this year. So whether we get strawberries or not from them is still a surprise, but definitely keep an eye on these. And I did purchase another strawberry plant for this year, and it's already got strawberries growing out of it. Look at that. These tend to blossom pretty fast. And then over here, as you remember, I had these troughs that I've used for several years for planting. You probably remember them from last year. And here they are. Now this was the result of a lemon seed. A little plant growing. We're going to just keep letting that grow and keep an eye on it. And the rest of these troughs, I planted garlic. Got a little sun coming out here. This is great. Now garlic was easy. You just take the wedge of garlic, dig a hole, you plant it standing up, and cover it up, and you water it, and lo and behold, you see something here? I see a sprout. Looks like that garlic plant is growing. Maybe we will get some garlic here this year. Wow. So far the 2021 balcony garden season has been a success. I'd like to thank everybody who's watching and following and who has subscribed. And I welcome everybody's comments and feedback. And hopefully that'll help make my gardening experience better and your gardening experience better. Oh. Oh. You thought that gardening is the only thing that I know? I may know some other things too. It's great to see that people are acknowledging my channel, and hopefully it'll help me make my gardening better. Hopefully some of the tips will help make your gardening better, and hopefully we'll all be successful with our gardens. Thanks for watching. See you next week.